Hey everybody, welcome to Overcoming Average again, sponsored by Atlas IT Solutions, your Apple certified IT support specialist. So tonight we're going over chapters 3 and 4 of the 12 Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson. It's sort of an interesting point in time, and I'm going to pull up some data here to kind of give us a snapshot of where we are in history as far as the coronavirus goes. I don't know when I'll get to release this podcast, but as of today, it's April the 25th, 2020. And in the U.S., we're getting close to 1 million cases of coronavirus, 960,651, with a total of 50,256 deaths. So Rick and I are social distancing here. We're at a minimum of 6 feet apart, and but we had a couple buddies who normally would have joined us to talk about these chapters that we've read together, and they decided to stay home to stay safe and be a little more distant. So we wish them well and hope to see them again soon. But thanks for coming, Rick, and excited to see you.
Thanks for having me.
It's nice to see somebody for a little bit. So. Talking about chapters 3 and 4, remind me the 2 chapter names, if you'll just tell everybody what they are.
Rule 3 is make friends with people who want the best for you. And rule 4 is compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today.
Man, these are good ones. And I think actually in chapter 1 and 2, last time when we discussed, when Rob was here, I mentioned I was kind of excited about this chapter because, and I hate that him and some of the other guys are not here with us today, but I would consider you and some of those guys friends of mine who want the best for me, and I would hope that I give off the same to you guys. But so what in your life did this chapter spark? Or what did it make you think about? I know before we hit record, you were talking about sort of the opposite of not necessarily thinking about people that want the best for you, but maybe getting rid of people who don't want the best. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. I think when you're growing up in like middle school, high school, you got people that are just in your life and you're stuck in that situation and there's nothing you could do about it. But now when you got a job, you get to pick your friends, pick where you work, and you get to find the right situation. And you just don't need to have people in your life. And the people who don't want the best for you, you could cast them aside.
Yeah.
I think some people have loyalty to certain people that still want that don't want the best for them, and they kind of maintain those friendships or relationships because of loyalty.
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up because I've had friends over my life that just in recent months and years I've thought, I don't know if that person is really good for me. It's just that that word loyalty is funny because some of these people that I'm thinking of, I've been friends with them longer than maybe anybody that I've known, and I kind of came to the realization of I don't know what this relationship is. It's just sort of something that I've hung on to, maybe for loyalty's sake, but it's not necessarily. They don't necessarily want the best for me. It doesn't seem like that, and yeah. So it has made me think about relationships, I'll call them, that maybe are not the best for me.
I think I've had some like weird family relationships that were not healthy. Fortunately, some of those people have passed away, but it's like, if this relationship is toxic, why are you hanging on? Like, okay, we're family and everything, but sometimes that could, cause a lot more trauma. You're not getting anything out of a relationship. If you're just getting pain, it's not worth it.
Yeah. That's a hard decision. I think for me, the first step was having it dawn on me, like evaluating the relationship almost one by one and saying, is this a relationship something that's good for me or is it not good for me? I can't say that I've made like a list and gone down it, but there's definitely been some after reading this chapter that popped up to me as you should think about this and see, is this a fruitful relationship for your long-term benefit? Yeah. So I was talking earlier before we hit record again about how Jordan Peterson, I like how, I don't know if he specifically mentions it in the book or not, but he talks about how true friends will mourn with you. They'll be with you during the rough times, but they'll also be there with you in celebratory times, which I think also says a lot, because there are some of those people that, of course, they're going to be there for some of the sad times. But when you get that raise, when you move into a new home, when you're doing something that's a good thing, sometimes people are scarce because maybe they're jealous, maybe they're frustrated, maybe they really are not happy for you for achieving those things or getting those things. So that's also something to observe. I pay close attention to the people. It's old school almost anymore. The people that remember you in the good times also and celebrate. Send a card, send a thank you card, do those sort of things.
I think it's probably more when everything's going well, you're having fun. But if things go bad, then people aren't there. That's kind of what I kind of experience, is that if something is going wrong, then they won't be there. I've had to look at myself a lot with this chapter. I think sports is a great way of revealing character and stuff like that. You learn a lot from sports, and I used to run track, cross country in college, and one of my teammates made the national championships, and on one hand, I want the best for him, but in the other hand, I'm jealous, and I was like, man. So it's like, man,
That's why you like to play golf with me, right? Because I'm going to lose every time. It makes you feel good.
Yeah. And I think the chapter goes into that too. Like, are you just being friends with people because it makes you feel better about yourself? And that's ultimately not healthy either.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I remember that part as well. I think we see it. It seems to be more predominant in high school and middle school, maybe, where it's harder to mask the intentions.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think we all know people that you're like, man, you're totally friends with that person because they can hook you up, or you think that you're going to get a better position in life or something by being friends with them. And
it's like, oh, this person is an alcoholic. He's got this and that going on, well, I'm better than that guy. So, I look better in relation.
Right.
Jordan talked about how he grew up in, I don't know, Canada somewhere. And his friends that he had there, they were envious of his success. And I don't know if they want to bring him down or whatnot, but he said he had to shed those relationships. So,
yeah, I've heard of cultures other than our own where I think in an American culture, and maybe not so much anymore, but it's praised when you do something that's out of the ordinary or when you stand out, and it's good to be the best in a way in sports or in academics or whatever. Yeah. But in other cultures, I've seen examples where it's heavily looked down upon to stand out. You don't want to be extraordinary. You just want to be like everybody else, because maybe it's those cultures view it as a prideful thing, or, oh, are you trying to be better than us? Like, are we not good enough for you? Almost the opposite. They were not bringing people down, but just sort of disallowing them from rising. And I think that's the essence of this particular chapter. is that we want to be friends with people who want the best for us. And if you break that down, like you want to be friends with people who want the best for you. So not just have relationships with, but be friends with those people. Not just have that kind of, oh yeah, I know the guy down the street who's super rich and owns a bunch of companies and whatever, but actually be a friend with them, which is a relationship. And then you want to be friends with someone who wants the best for you. So it's not about can they get something from you. It's about them actually giving back to you as an individual. So you're, it's almost, it could be looked at as a selfish thing where they're looking for the best for you, but it's really not. It's just really the heart of a relationship of good friends that genuinely care, want to see you do well, want to see you succeed. Yeah.
Yeah. Your friend said that we were just talking to, he said that, everybody seems to have an angle. Like nobody wants to be your friend for being your friend, but they always have some angle how you're going to help them. I think that's the wrong way to go about it. If you become friends with somebody, there may be a business opportunity or something that comes along, but if you're just trying to make a quick friend just to use them some way, people see through that.
Yeah.
So there is the chicken or the egg. You want this or that, but being a true friend is probably the best way to go. Well,
and going back to our culture, I think it's something to be said too about having those people in your life that there's no strings attached. And the fact that, and again, the friend that we were just talking to was talking about how everybody, it feels like every website you go to, every email you read is somebody trying to sell you something. Somebody that's like, hey, you seem really interesting. You seem great for this new mutual fund we're trying to sell. Or there's always an angle. At least it feels like it. And I understand that sales is hard. It's hard to sell anybody anything these days. But and I'm thinking of a friend of mine who I would consider one of my long-standing friends. We've been through a lot of good stuff and a lot of bad stuff together. And we've been friends through thick and thin, really. I don't see him that often. But when I do see him, it's like no time has passed. Everything's just like we pick right back up. And he was always one of those people that was happy to see success, always there, understanding during hard times, like just one of those few people. And those people are so rare. And I remember this particular individual when I first met him. He asked me to have coffee with him, and I just was thinking, okay, at what point in this conversation is he going to turn the conversation to, well, now that I have you for a minute, what do you think about such as, or are you free on Saturday, or some sort of an angle? And I remember we had, I don't know, a long coffee meeting, and I literally walked into that meeting. It was a Starbucks across from my old college. And I remember thinking, he chickened out. He couldn't bring himself to throw the sales pitch at me. And so then the next coffee meeting, I thought, okay, here it comes. It's going to be he's going to pitch me this time. And he didn't. And then on the third time, I let my guard down. I thought,
what's the deal?
Maybe he doesn't have an agenda. And the meeting ended, and he said, hey man, great talking to you. And he left. And I thought, I think this guy genuinely doesn't have an agenda. So it's so rare. But I think that says something about what we can, not only the friends that we look for, but also the friends that we can be to each other. I think genuine friends, of course, there's things that you want from each other, but it's not just a business deal or we want the best for each other.
So Jordan got into about you could want the best for somebody else, but they have to be willing to want the help. And he said that some people just want to be the victim. They get a a status symbol about being a victim. They get sympathy points. And he said he had to do like psychology for like court appointed psychological sessions, and he says it never worked out. It was a travesty. I'm a physical therapist, and like my personal philosophy is that I cannot care more about your treatment or your health than you care about it yourself, because I can't bang my head against the wall frustrated like, oh man, I'm trying to get you better, trying to do this and that, and you don't care. It never works. If I care more about them than they care about themselves, the therapy never works out. So
Interesting.
definitely finding the people who, you know, that you could breathe life into, but they have to be willing to accept it. They can't want to be a victim. I think our society applauds, you know, being a victim. But you need to, if you're victimized, you need to then overcome that. So,
yeah. Again, another example of somebody just this week that actually reached out to me, asking a question about accounting. It seemed just a generic thing, and it wasn't a direct. It was just in a group on a Facebook group. Somebody said, "Hey, does anybody have any good ideas for an accounting software?" And I thought, well, you know, QuickBooks is kind of the thing. So I just said QuickBooks Online is kind of the thing if you're looking for accounting stuff. And so then the messages started back and forth. And as it turns out, they were involved in an MLM, a multi-level marketing. I would call it a scam. And I just thought, man, I hate it. But this, there are some people that are just looking for that sort of fast dollar, and into that, oh, I've got a great business idea, and the new business idea just so happens to be once again another MLM situation where maybe those companies are legitimate in some ways, but it's just deceiving in the sense that you're not selling the product as much as you are marketing and recruiting and trying to get other people under your belt to go out and sell. And it's a little deceptive. And this particular person, I thought, oh man, you know, I just kind of like you said, it's like they're missing, they're looking for that quick dollar instead of looking for the depth of the job or the position or the company they want to start. They're just kind of look, what's the quickest way I can get a fast dollar? And it's unfortunate. There are some people, and I think the reason I'm bringing that up is just, as you mentioned, some people desire it. Some people really want to learn. And other people, they don't even want to hear like, hey, this MLM thing might not be the best idea. You're probably going to spend more on QuickBooks than you are going to make money in a month. So they don't want to hear it. They're just, no, I don't want to hear it. This is a great idea. Trust me, I'm going to be the best one in the world. You know, and you just kind of say, okay, best of luck to you. But they need to be on the receiving end of, they're looking for the people that want the best for them. And sometimes that's hard because if they were to ask me my opinion, I would give it to them, and maybe I could shed some light on that stuff for them.
well, I think you're describing just not receiving help because they don't trust that your help is good for them. I think Jordan is describing people who like feeling victimized. They like, oh, I can't afford this, or life has been rough. I have this disease, they get off on, just woe is me. I think there's a difference between just being ignorant about multi-level marketing schemes that don't work versus just enjoying being a victim. So
yeah, that's a whole nother level. Someone that just loves, I don't even know if it's the spotlight, but you're right. I mean, I've got this sickness and I was in this surgery. It just woe is me. They like that. I don't understand that. I mean, I know that maybe it gives them that glimpse of attention that they're maybe looking for. It's just somebody to say, "Oh man, I really feel bad for you. How can I help you?" But not a healthy place to stay.
Yeah.
Because I think a true friend, going back to the concept of chapter 3, is somebody that wants the best for you is going to say, "Hey, you got to change your mindset a little bit. You got to get out of that. Oh, I had this happen and this happen." And I mean, I've been there. I've been in those places before, and I've had people tell me, instead of thinking about all this negative stuff, let's look at the positive. What are the good things you have? Not to be negating the bad or pretending like it's not there, but like let's look at both sides for sure.
The hardest thing for me is someone who has like dementia or like mental illness where, I understand like it's, with dementia, it's not their fault. Mental illness, like they're dealing with major issues, but even I still want better for you, but it's just not going to work. So, there's some people who do want to be the victim, and certain people who definitely are victimized by circumstances, and but still some people you can't help. So
yeah,
it's rough though. It's the hardest part of my job, I think.
Yeah. It's my mom told me when I was really young that if I was lucky, I would have a handful of friends. Yeah. And at that point in my life, I thought, oh, she's crazy. I've got so many friends. And when you're in high school, you have so many so-called friends.
Yeah.
And I look back now and I literally don't talk to or associate with any of those people. Not a one of them. Maybe
you got like 2,000 Facebook friends or something like that.
Yeah, it's like you look and you're like, wow, I've got thousands of Facebook friends and LinkedIn friends, and I talk to a dozen of them on a regular basis, and half of those people are sort of temporarily in my life, and maybe they'll fly through. But it's rare, and it's a good thing. I think there was some wisdom there that you're lucky if you have that handful of friends, 4 or 5 true friends.
So I want to talk about something kind of controversial. I've noticed, I think, the dynamics of women. I used to be a cross country coach at a all Catholic girls school. Side note, I was like the only boy they saw all day, so that was I was like 22. But anyways, I had a really good runner. I just knew she was super fast. I think she was like my 9th girl on the team, but I'm like, she's got to be like, she could be like top 5, and top 5 it's what scores points, and so we actually had a pretty good team, and I'm like, if we get her a little bit faster, we definitely need a 5th girl. So if we get her faster, team's gonna be really good. But she wouldn't pass. She'd be in the JV race, and then she'd run with her friends, and I'm like, I know she could run faster. I said, okay, this one race, I'm like, Jolene, you're on varsity, and I think you could run. Just getting out of the race with her friends and being in a different situation, she ended up running like 3 minutes faster. And then
wow.
she ended up being like the 4th girl on the team. And then my wife was my wife was also on the cross country team with me in college, and she was the top girl on the team, captain of the team and whatnot. But there was a younger girl, Jenny, who was just a little bit behind her, not much. But as soon as my wife graduated, this girl like took off, and she ended up running like 30 seconds faster a mile and like make the national championships and stuff like that. And it's like, I feel like girls are more like afraid to step on toes, and don't want to, I don't want to make you mad, so I don't want to like physically pass you. Like you have your pecking order. I feel like guys, I don't know, we don't care. We're gonna we're just gonna beat the other people.
Yeah.
But I don't know. If we're true friends, true teammates, we want the best for each other. Okay, yeah. If you're faster than me, you need to go on and go ahead. But it's like I feel like females are just a little more timid, and they're afraid of stepping on toes. And
Well, and I guess it could be said that what is best to go along with that. Maybe they think what's best is
harmony.
to
Team
get
harmony.
along or to not argue. I don't know. I'm sure not everybody's one way or the other, but I would agree. There's something about when there's a guy dominating in a group, it just fires everybody else up where they're just like, I'm going to beat this guy.
Take them down.
Especially if they have a really bad attitude.
Yeah. Yeah. I did have, when I was a freshman, and then there was a guy who was faster than me, and then I think sophomore year, I think maybe at the end of my freshman year, I started beating him. And the next year, he just didn't come out for the team, like,
Really?
Yeah.
So going back to the girl that did well after
Melissa.
she went to varsity.
Yeah.
That one's intriguing to me. So do you think it was because she was with her friends?
Yeah, she didn't want to pass her friends. So I said, your friends aren't going to be in this race, and you're on,
Wow. So she went and ran with strangers and did better. Or not strangers, but a different group of people without a connection.
I think the captain of the team was actually our 8th fastest girl, which would be the first JV girl. And then she was like 9th. So I think it was like she didn't want to pass the captain of the team or something like that. But then when I put her on varsity, she was able to pass the 7th, 6th, and 5th girl also. So,
Wow.
So
That's very interesting.
yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
And what in that person made you see the potential?
She just didn't look like she was trying hard. Like she was running with or behind the captain of the team, and she didn't look like she was running hard. Yeah.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So chapter 4, let me get this right. It's
Compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today.
right. Again, these sort of tie together, but so profound in just the day to day. Like, compare yourself to who you were. And honestly, as I've done that, it's crazy, the difference. I feel like a totally different person. Depends on how far back I go. If I go back to last week, it's whatever. But if I go back to when I was in high school or college, I'm a totally different human being to who I used to be. It depends on the aspect. On some ways, I've excelled more than I thought I would. In other ways, I've not succeeded. But the point, I believe, in that chapter was targeting and aiming at something. And if you have no aim, this kind of goes without saying, but if you have no direction, no plan, no aim, you're going to get absolutely nowhere. So it's not to dispel or say that you shouldn't be comparing, but rather than compare to somebody else and say, well, so-and-so is better at whatever, they have more money than I do today. Well, let's look at who I used to be yesterday and let's compare that, because if I'm getting worse, maybe I need to correct that and know, I came from a place where I was better. Or if I am better, then maybe I give myself some credit for that. So it's not that comparing is a bad thing. It's just, who are you comparing to? So what's something for you? Did you compare yourself to who you used to be?
I like to find my weaknesses and then attack it. So I used to stutter as a kid and, a little socially awkward. So I'm like, okay, that's my weakness. So I want to practice that. So doing this podcast is like kind of a struggle for me. So
You're doing good.
yeah. So finding my weakness and then trying to improve on that. I think what Jordan started the chapter, he was talking about like somebody was homecoming queen and somebody was a mechanic and everybody was good in a small town. In a small town, everybody had some game that they won in. They were the best at one thing. And then as things become bigger and bigger, okay, I'm a pretty good basketball player, but I'm no Michael Jordan. So if you're comparing yourself to Michael Jordan, you're going to lose every time. But if you compare yourself, okay, I shot 70% from the field, now I'm shooting 78% from the free throw line or whatever. So comparing yourself to yourself. So the other thing was, I forgot. Finding one game. I really like that. Like, all you have to do to be really successful in life is find one thing you're really good at. Whether you're an auto mechanic or whatnot, you're good at computers, you can make that a career. What I found is that being good at one thing is good, but it's even better to be good at two things. So, so say you're good at computers, but then you're also an educator. If you could combine computer programs to do an education thing, then you could use both those things to make something great. So if you're just an educator, you could educate 30 kids or whatever. But if you could combine some of your talents, you could have a bigger impact. I'm a physical therapist, but I also have like a mechanically inclined mind. So that kind of, for my my knee machine, I've was able to utilize that to do something extra, or to do something different that nobody else has done before. So, I
was listening to Tom Green, the comedian.
Yeah.
And he was actually on Joe Rogan a while back, actually recently. And it was funny because he has a podcast. He had a show that he was doing. He had all this stuff. I'd never even heard of it. And, Tom Green's a pretty big name, and he had some big names on there. Ben McDonald, I believe, and a bunch of other people that he really respected. But it just wasn't his thing.
Yeah.
And he enjoyed it.
Yeah.
But it just wasn't his thing. And so he said he went back to doing stand-up, and he just came alive. He was like, man, I'm doing this. I'm good at it, and they're paying me to do it. And so he just thought, why don't I just do this? Like, I'm getting paid. It's the thing I'm doing. I'm getting paid to do what I love instead of doing something that I love and not getting paid for it. So it was kind of a dual purpose thing. But I thought that was funny. I haven't heard from Tom Green in a long time, but he's still hilarious in my opinion.
Yeah, I think you just have to be strategic. Like, okay, you definitely have to be good at one thing. If you could be good at two things, great. If you could find somebody, you're good at this thing, and find somebody who's good at that thing, and combine your efforts, that's good too. And then just finding your weakness and then trying to improve on that. Your golf game, if you were much better at that, then you get ahead in life.
Yeah, that's right.
No, but if I'm, if I have, awkward speaking in front of crowds of people, then I need to work on that.
So I've gone back and forth on this in my life over the years, actually. Some people have a philosophy of if you are, an A plus at this one thing, that's what you should do. And if you're like a D at something else, you should just not do it at all, or pass it off, or delegate it, or whatever. The other philosophy is, if you're an A, that's good enough. But if you're a D, you need to work on that and level that up. Like, what do you think about that? Because I've honestly gone back and forth.
We need Rob here. He told us a joke the other day. Like, how do you know who's the extroverted engineer? When he introduces himself, he looks at your shoes instead of his shoes. So if an engineer could be like, have somewhat of a personality, then he could like rule the world. But so the certain brain types where, okay, you're logical here, but you're not the best people person or something like that. So I think it's better to be a good manager. You need to be good at a lot of different things. If you're, a nuclear scientist where you're just punching numbers, it's probably better to be just super good at.
Yeah.
I think the good thing about our economy is that there's room for everybody. People who, an accountant, you got Rain Man becoming an accountant or something like that.
Well, and the thing that really, it was actually kind of sad, but true, that Jordan Peterson was saying. He said, if you're a 1 in a million and you live in Manhattan, there's 20 of you.
Yeah.
Which is, that's really something to think about. I mean, the United States has 350 million people?
Yeah.
So if you're 1 in a million, there's 350 of you in the United States alone.
Yeah.
That's tough. I mean, that's a very tough pill to swallow. I know that, I do this podcast because I enjoy it and I like talking to people and hopefully can help people out. But I know that there's lots of other podcasts people could be listening to. And that's okay. But to go back to what I was thinking about, I think for me, there needs to be a little bit of balance, and focus. So the engineer example is a very good one. And I know for me, and I'm speaking for myself, but I'm a people person. I like to talk to people, which is very uncommon in a technology job. Most people in technology, that joke is so funny to me because the guy's looking at your shoes instead of his. It's so accurate. I mean, Saturday Night Live does skits with the IT guy, move, get out of the way. I'll take care of it for you. It's become a stigma because that personality type that's really good at technology, the highly advanced engineer brain, they just can't communicate with people as well. They're lacking some of those skills. And so I think that those skills should continue, but also there needs to be a little bit of balance. Maybe you don't have to be the perfect auditor. You don't have to be able to speak in front of tons of people, but you should be able to speak in front of 5 or 6. Like you should be able to take a room of 3 or 4 people and have a captive audience because you're the expert in that field. So it may be that you only can hone that skill when you're talking about what you're really good at, that one thing. And maybe that's all it is, but you need to work on that. And I'm speaking to all my other IT brothers and sisters out there. Don't be weird. Work on that skill for sure. So the balance piece is there, but also I'll go back to something. So being the 1 in 350 million, if you're 1 in a million, I mean, that's super daunting. But at the same time, from a business standpoint, I've heard people say, you might not be Elon Musk. You might not end up being Jeff Bezos or something and come up with like the next Apple or Amazon. But if you were the best lawn care guy in your county, you could make just a ton of money and be super successful and happy and just well off, and life would be fantastic. and you would just be the best lawn care guy in your county. And so I think in our social media world, a lot of people look at other people thinking about that question. And the rule, I guess, is they're comparing themselves to Jeff Bezos, and they want to be this like phenomenal, like one in a trillion, really, if you think about it, type personality. When really, if you go back to their desires, what do you actually want out of life? You could achieve those desires easily by being the best in your field in this county or in this neighborhood even. So, at least for me, that's kind of been a reflection in my own life of thinking, okay, how good does good have to be to achieve what I actually want to achieve?
I think a thing I'm afraid of is like starting a business. And so it's like, okay, I got family responsibilities. It's a big risk to start a business. And again, I applaud you. You know, that's brave. It's a hard thing to do, and I really respect that. But it's like, okay, right now I have a lot of responsibility, so I want to improve myself, but now I definitely want to improve my kids. So where I'm lacking, that's where I want to like help my kids out. You know, okay, by the time you're 18, I want you to start 3 businesses. You know, I want you to, okay, you have trouble public speaking. I want you to practice that. I want you, hey, I want you to strike up a conversation with that person over there and make a new friend, you know?
So you're advocating for your kids to be well-rounded, to bring up the C's and the B's to be A's. Is that what you're saying?
Well, wherever they're lacking, I want them better.
Yeah.
And I want them to try to find one talent and do that really well. But, yeah, I feel like I just want my kids to be better than me. So
yeah,
where I feel like I'm lacking, and unfortunately, like sometimes it's like, okay, it's, you know, it's risky to start a business when you got a family and you got to put a roof over their heads. But, before they have too much responsibility, like, hey, let's try this, trying to expand their abilities. So,
well, I think there does need to be both. I think there needs to be balance and focus, like I keep going back to. I know this is the generation of people that get paid millions of dollars to play video games and film themselves playing video games and let other people watch them. I mean, it's just, it really blows my mind. I mean, we grew up in the 80s and the 90s where video games were going to rot your brain. And now there are people that play video games and make more than anyone in that generation could have imagined somebody doing that. So who knows what time will tell. But I think there's more to it than just like a lazy slob playing video games. It takes the mentality to see that, hey, this is interesting. I'm going to show other people what I can do, posting it online. There's more to it.
For that, you have to be good at least 3 things. You have to be good at video games. You have to be technologically savvy to do video editing. And then you need to have a good personality where people like talking to you.
Yeah.
So that actually takes 3 talents. With my business, with my knee patent, my knee machine patent, okay, I'm a good physical therapist, and I have good mechanical engineering type stuff, but maybe I need to work better on marketing, you know. I need get help with computers. So I've gotten friends and lawyers and engineering companies to help, but so yeah, to succeed, you need to actually do a lot. You don't have to be the best at one thing. You know, if you're going to be in the Olympics, it's probably good to be the best at one thing, but for most things, it's good to be good at a lot of different things.
Well, and it's like it just dawned on me that the balance and the focus comes from not just totally letting yourself go. It's not like, well, I don't have the best hygiene, so I'll just stop showering, and that sort of thing. Going back to the IT professionals, right? It's it's like, no, you should work on your auditory skills. You should work on your people skills, because those are really the basics of life in a way. Like getting along with other humans is very important to just surviving, right? Like finding a mate, having friends and relationships is important to be a good people person. So it's not something that you should just say, well, I'm not good at that, I'm going to give up. It's try your best, but at some point, checking out your flaws and saying, okay, this legal stuff is just going over my head, and I'm not going to spend the next 10 years trying to understand legal. I'm going to hire a really good lawyer, and so I can focus on making the knee machine.
Yeah.
I think for me, that's kind of what it is just better yourself as best as you can. Spend a good bit of time on the thing that you really are good at, and try not to neglect. But at some point, be wise enough to delegate. I know for me, there's a list of things I could go on that I'm terrible at. But I would consider them basics. I can't spell, I can't write. It's just horrible. I can't type very well. It just takes me forever to type a sentence. But I have to do that. I mean, I have to write emails and stuff. So, but that's things that I could eventually delegate to somebody better and use my time in a more wise way. But, I think for me, the struggle is sort of like, what am I good at? And going back to that question is looking back at, well, what have I spent my time on in the past decade, in the past 5 years? What do I wake up every day and get excited about doing? And what do I do well? And looking at those things. So for me, I look at some things, I'm really happy, like, wow, I really have come a long way. And since yesterday, since a week ago, since 10 years ago, and other things, I think, wow, I clearly didn't care about that goal or whatever. So, and I think it goes without saying, the other half of that coin of not comparing yourself to somebody else. I mean, there's just no good in that. Yeah. There's not really one good thing you can say about, I'm going to compare myself to the next door neighbor, to the guy down the street, to the person with a different car. I mean, everybody's circumstances are so different. And I know for me, this is no secret that I'm a big Dave Ramsey guy. I think, people should handle their money differently. They should save. And I've run across some people where my initial judgment of them was, well, they just spend their money unwisely and they've bought all this stuff or whatever. I don't think that often, but I remember this one instance, and this was a long time ago, so I kind of learned my lesson then. I thought, oh, this younger guy's got all this stuff and he probably just blew all his money. Well, as it turned out, when the topic came up about Dave Ramsey, the guy was a big Dave Ramsey guy also.
Yeah.
But he had a great job. He had inherited a lot of money. So he had already paid off his house. He'd already paid off his stuff. He had a nice car because he had the money for it.
Yeah.
And you have to be careful about that when you're comparing to other people, to say, man, this person may have something because they got in real bad debt for it, or maybe they actually had the money for it. So anytime you're comparing with another person, it's just a slippery slope. You never know the full story. And so it's just better to not try to compare. And we all know that, but still, that's part of the rule, is just focus on yourself. That's the only person that you can change.
Part of the chapter that I really liked was consult your resentments and find that what really makes you mad. I think he talked about, he had a client who was, obsessive compulsive, and he had to fix his pillow, fluff his pillow so many times, this and that. And he asked, if if you just let anything out, and what would you do? Or he had this resentment towards his father-in-law. He's like, I'd shake him like a rag. Or so finding out what you resent and fixing a tyranny. So he said, wherever resentment lies, it's either tyranny or selfishness. So are you being, so with the whole coronavirus, they closed down the parking lot to the park where I run, and they didn't close down the park. They just closed down the parking lot. So I would have to run half mile to the park, half mile back on a busy road. And I'm like, I'm more likely to be killed on this stupid road running with no shoulder. So, it just irked me wrong. I'm like, is this petty tyranny or am I just being selfish and foolish? So,
well, and to go to the coronavirus, we've talked about this off the air, but a friend of mine wrote an article about the 5 levels of COVID stance, I guess. And we've talked about it, but for the listeners, it basically, a level 1 would be somebody who's just totally paranoid, that they're afraid of the virus personally. They don't want to get it personally. They're afraid of getting sick, and I think everyone should just totally isolate, regardless of the damage otherwise. A level 2 would be somebody that takes it very serious, takes it very like, I'm going to follow all the rules. The government says we should be social distancing. We should be no more than 10 people and so on. And if you think otherwise, you're just money hungry and you just, want the economy to come back so that you can make a bunch of money. A 3 would be the middle level, which is sort of, some of this is overblown, but it's also a very serious virus. We should be cautious, but it is kind of blown out of proportion. A 4 has the stance of, look, let's get back to work. If you're high risk, then take care of yourself, stay home. If you're sick, stay home. If you've been around people who are sick, stay home. But otherwise, let's just continue to go about normal, because the consequences of the shutdown are more damaging than the actual virus itself. And then, of course, the level 5 is, it was created by China to destroy our government, and it's all a big hoax, and there is no virus. Okay. And we even kind of chuckle at, I would say, the 1 and the 5, we sort of laugh at in a way, but the article was to talk about how we shouldn't judge the stance of the person. If you're a 1, just understand that that's the way they feel about it, and try to be kind to them, and maybe, whatever. And if you're a 4 and you're talking to a 2, maybe just treat them with a little bit of caution. But yeah, these are weird times for sure. It's to kind of turn the conversation to the coronavirus. It's definitely tough to know what to do. It's so new. We've only got a couple of months of data. We don't really know the numbers. We don't know why some people really get it bad and some people don't. We're just in a discovery phase. And so I would err on the side of caution, but at the same time, it's tough to see millions of people lose their jobs and lose their well-being.
Yeah. I think Dave Ramsey said, actually, 100 people have lost their jobs for every one person who's been infected. Did you say there was like 1 million cases in the U.S.? We're getting close to 1 million. We're still not over 1 million. I think it's 960-some thousand cases. So that wouldn't be right, because then it would be 100 million people have been unemployed. It's been 25 million. So 25 people have lost their job for every one person who's been infected by the virus. So yeah, that's a lot of hardship on people. Well, and at the same time, I'm struggling with the dichotomy even today, because I've got a neighbor.
just a couple houses down, 3 houses down here, that she's pregnant. I think she's 17 weeks pregnant today. And she has the virus. She wouldn't have been tested otherwise. She was actually on the news because she would not have been tested had she not been pregnant. She would have been out and about doing her thing, or social distancing to some extent, right? But then the other side of the coin for me is another friend of mine who he just got out of the hospital in a 17-day stay on a ventilator for 3 days here in Charlotte. So I'm actually hoping to talk to both of them and get their story, find out what's going on with them, and more information the better, I think, at this point.
I just don't think we fully understand what to do. If people understood, I think things would be different. Like, the original plan was to flatten the curve so that we didn't overwhelm our medical system. I know we have a good friend who got his hours cut. I know 3 doctors who've been fired. Have a cousin who lost her job. She's a speech language pathologist. It's so ironic that a healthcare crisis has caused healthcare professionals to lose their jobs. We are not at max capacity. I think maybe in New York City there was, but in most places, the hospitals are ghost towns. So we haven't reached our max capacity with our healthcare system. And I think if things got out of hand in certain areas, then we could then do a lockdown. Like I said, I think New York should have been shut down, locked down, but we're not going to get rid of this virus by social distancing. There's no chance that we will eliminate it. Even if we do, maybe during the summer, there's the hot weather, humid air could make the virus less transmissible. But in September, somebody flies from Australia, comes here, and then starts the whole thing all over again. So if we are going to do this, we would have to do it for 12 months till we get a vaccine. And that's a big if. We may not get a vaccine, or the virus may change. So the only solution is do what we're doing for 12 months, or we're just all going to get it. And we need to do our best to protect the elderly. I think having people live in nursing homes, like the people who work at the nursing homes, shouldn't leave the nursing homes, and they should get paid triple time, work 2 months, sleep there, and work at nursing homes. But I think half the deaths have come from nursing homes. I don't think we really know what. This isn't going to work by just social distancing and just isolating. It's either we're going to get a vaccine, or pretty much everybody's going to get 70% of the population is going to get it.
Well, I agree, and I don't think anybody really knows what to do. I think I've been following the guidelines as best I can, but as far as news media, I've just been basically watching the press with the White House and watching what they say, and the CDC. And they have said things like flatten the curve, not slow the spread to try to stop from overwhelming, not like stop everything. I think people think by flattening the curve, they mean less people will get the virus. That's not true. It's right.
The same number of people are going to get the virus. It's just going to happen over a longer period of time. So basically, it's like if our medical capacity can handle it, the quicker it is, the better. So we could drag this thing out for 9 months, Or I think Sweden, said, at Stockholm, we have like 40% of the population has it already. And, probably they'll have herd immunity by like 7 months. So, or in another few months, 2 months. So, I think we're killing the economy for no reason, because it's here to stay. Once it gets past 100 people, the genie's out of the bottle. It's gonna infect 70% of the population, no matter what we do.
Yeah. Well, and I think aside from the coronavirus, it's what else will it be in the future? What precedent are we setting? What's the next thing that's going to shut the whole country down and cause this effect? I mean, it's just it can't be like this. We have to be strong and fight. There has to be a point where we come back. I think Dan Crenshaw was saying, like, at some point we have to stop the retreat where we got sort of ambushed and said, okay, let's kind of collect our thoughts here and find out what's going on. But at some point we have to turn around and fight. And we got to go back to work and say, okay, let's get ready to have our hospitals and stuff take on the capacity of these people that need help, and not just be crippled by this for a long time. So hopefully that'll be the case, and hopefully we will we'll get back to normal sometime in the near future.
Yeah, I don't know.
So, well, thanks for coming on, talking about chapter 3 and 4 of 12 Rules for Life with us. So we'll be back for a couple more episodes. I don't know when. Obviously, with the social distancing, maybe we can have a couple of other guys who've been studying. And again, if you're listening and it sounds interesting, feel free to reach out. You can find us at overcomingaverage.net. Or you can find the company website, atlascarolina.com, who the company I work for and run. So thanks for joining us, and have a great day.